Bom dia, todo mundo. Tô esperando o Jeff chegar. Tem uma diferença de 4 minutos, sei lá eu por quê. Coisas dos relógios internacionais e coisas que o valha. Então, a gente está esperando por ele. Estou esperando vocês também aqui. Seria almoço com as estrelas, mas não é almoço. Então, estamos esperando o Jeff para falar sobre Lean UX. E eu quero saber quem é que está interessado no assunto. Se puder passar aqui nos comentários, eu vou ficar bem feliz. Muito bem. Por que esse assunto? Por que Lean UX, né? E por que Forever Employable, que também é esse novo livro do Jeff? Primeiro porque, sem dúvida nenhuma, nós temos um desafio aí, que se a gente vai viver mais, como é que a gente faz para ficar... como é que a gente faz para ficar? Estou esperando, querido unicórnio, estou esperando o Jeff entrar aqui. A coisa não está fácil, não. Né? Bom, então, estou esperando o Jeff chegar, ele tem o link, vamos ver se ele não me dá o cano. Ai, meu Deus do céu. Outro dia eu fiz a reunião com ele, deu tudo certo, mas ele chegou atrasadinho. E acho que é uma das características, cada um, né, amores? Muito bem. Então, estava falando sobre a questão da gente viver mais, né? E ter que se refazer a cada X de tempo. O que dá também a oportunidade de você mudar de trabalho tantas e quantas vezes você quiser, de atividade e tudo mais. Eu estou tranquila com relação a isso, né? Engraçado, para você aparece 8h57, né, com o unicórnio, e agora, sei lá, eu do Jeff. Deixa eu tentar falar com ele aqui. Ele... Estou perguntando aqui o que aconteceu, que ele não está aqui. Bom, uma vez o pessoal do... Bom dia, Pedro, tudo bem? Vocês têm perguntas para eu já deixar tudo arrumado aqui com o Jeff? Bom, outra razão de eu estar falando sobre Lean UX também, acho que todo mundo está sobrecarregado de trabalho, né? Uma coisa incrível isso de estar sobrecarregado, de estar com uma reunião em cima da outra, e um monte de reunião inútil, um monte de coisa inútil sendo falada nas reuniões, um monte de coisa que as pessoas... Olá, Fernando, como estás? Gusto em verte. E todas essas coisas, enfim, sei lá o que acontece, que é assim... uma das coisas que eu percebo que a gente tem como característica nas reuniões é que parece que as pessoas não estão se entendendo, e uma fica repetindo o que a outra falou, repetindo o que a outra falou. Eu acho que esse é um dos problemas. Outro problema é essa disputa de egos, e que fica todo mundo tentando resolver, complicando mais o problema do que deveria, para poder fazer com que as coisas pareçam mais... ou para que a pessoa possa dominar a reunião, não sei. Eu, particularmente, não gosto desse tipo de atitude, eu corto logo, a minha paciência é curta, meu tempo é curto, esse aqui é meu último sprint de vida, de um monte de coisa. Sei lá. Bom, é isso. Vou colocar o Jeff no ar, vamos lá. Hello, Jeff, how are you?
Hi, sorry, sorry. I always forget that
Hello.
this. Hi, how are you?
How are you? I'm
Good.
sorry. I was with my phone and I was talking without my phone. I think that for a while people were seeing my lips and they were trying to lip sync because I was without my phone. Completely crazy lady. Jeff, it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you for accepting. Um, we had a chat the other day, and I have here some folks that are your fans of your work and your books. So let's talk about um, the moment you decided to create with Josh Satan the book Lean UX, and how it evolved over time to the forever employable moment.
Sure, sure. And hey, folks, nice to see everybody. And apologize for just being a minute or two late. It was just every tool has a different set of requirements, and whether it's Zoom or StreamYard or whatever it is, and you're like, oh my God, I forgot that StreamYard needs this browser and this and that type of thing. Anyway, I'm here. So, Lean UX. Lean UX was interesting because Lean UX was a problem that I was working on with my team at a company called The Ladders back in 2008. And we were trying to figure out how to do Agile and UX together. That was the problem we were trying to solve. We were building a UX team in an organization that was becoming increasingly agile, and we didn't have any idea how to do that. And nobody knew how to do it either. And so we practiced and we tried and we failed. And what was interesting is there were lots of other people doing the same thing. And we started to build a community. The community was called the Agile UX Meetup, I think, initially. It was in the United States, primarily New York and San Francisco. And that ultimately became the Balanced Team movement, which was a cross-functional group of designers, developers, product managers, stakeholders who began to really address this problem head on. And I was a part of that conversation. Josh was a part of that conversation. And after three failed attempts to write a manuscript for O'Reilly that they would actually publish, I brought Josh on as a co-author because Josh and I at that point were teaching the material together. And so we were working on it every day, and we were learning how to explain it to people in a reasonable way. And so we wrote the book, version 1 of the book, based on how we were teaching the material. Now, to our pleasant surprise, the book became very popular, and we were lucky enough to write a second edition of the book. And the second edition really was four years later, and really looked at everything that we had learned and the feedback that we had received in that 4 years, plus adjusting for new ideas, things like design sprints and a bit more specificity around Scrum and that type of thing. And the interesting thing, by the way, this is new news, is that Josh and I last week signed a contract to write the third edition of Lean UX. So that'll be out next year. So it's very exciting to kind of take another, it'll come out nearly 10 years, be 9 years since we finished the first manuscript when it comes out. And, a lot has happened in that time frame. And what's interesting is that the foundational conversation in Lean UX, the idea of cross-functional collaboration, radical transparency, assumptions, hypotheses, experiments, continuous learning, customer centricity. We've applied those ideas not only in Lean UX, but actually Josh and I wrote a business book called Sense and Respond. We took those same ideas and just applied them to culture and leadership inside organizations. And that's been a really interesting conversation. And now with Forever Employable, which is out now, there it is, exists. I'm taking those same concepts and applying them to yourself, to your career, to your professional development, to your growth. And how do you take that same approach of customer centricity and apply it to your career, right? So who are the customers of your skill sets, of your expertise, and how can you continuously deliver value to them in a variety of ways with the desire, with the goal of shifting the nature of your career. So most of our careers are push based, right? We push ourselves into the market. We push ourselves onto job opportunities. We push ourselves into interviews. And if we're successful at applying these ideas that I write about in Forever Employable, the goal is to turn that 180 degrees and create a pull model, right? So that we're pulling opportunities towards us instead of us pushing ourselves towards opportunities. And that becomes a compelling way to manage your career, because you're much more in control of it, right? As opposed to kind of hoping that somebody will return your call or hoping that you'll get that next job. There's a steady stream of opportunities coming in after a while that you can choose from.
What's interesting about I have an echo from you. Well, one of the things that I noticed, thank you, Jeff, is that I, without any plan, I did this sort of thing with my career. I'm 60 years old. I've been in the UX market since the very, very beginning. And one of the things that I noticed is that you have to have a reputation. Whatever reputation it is, that you are too tough, that you are too tired to schedules, and you never, which is my reputation. I never show up to a meeting without a briefing. If there is someone send me a request without sending me the briefing of this meeting and what we will take out of this meeting, I don't show up. And people get scared because this is some sort of thing that everybody does here, especially in Brazil. People just, okay, just pop in because I need your advice, and this is not it. And so people call me, and now I'm helping a young company to set up their team because they are feeling that they are too anxious, to under pressure, and they are not delivering as much as they could because they are not just managing the whole stuff. I have a friend here that is asking you, how to manage your schedule, your schedule and work, and collaborative work in remote scenario. If this is so hard to do in a in-person setting, how to manage that in this remote post-COVID thing? This is his question.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know why that would be fundamentally different, or what aspects of management are being asked about. I find that, look, to your point, I think that given the fact that we don't have the luxury of bumping into someone in the hallway, right? So I just run into you in the hallway and we go, oh, that thing I was going to talk to you about, Amyris, right? Let me just grab you for a second. Or I see you in the kitchen at work and we can have a conversation about something. We don't have that opportunity here. And so we have to figure out how to be a bit more explicit about the topics for when we get together. So I actually really like your advice here, is to have an agenda for every meeting, because we're spending so much time like this in the office and on calls that it can be exhausting, and getting those breaks between calls are also very important, to give you time to think, to give you time to work, right? That type of thing. And so I think being explicit about when you need time with someone, being explicit about why you need that time with someone, being explicit about needing some time off or some time away from phone calls and that type of thing, I think is very important. The tools that we have today, it's going to be really, I think in a year, we're going to see some remarkable innovations, because the tools that we have today are mimicking the real world environments, right? So we've got virtual whiteboards because we have physical whiteboards, and we do video conferencing because I can't talk to you face to face in person at the moment. I think that we're going to see some significant innovations that stop, or that go well beyond mimicking the real world, and truly embracing the power that technology can give us. I don't know what that's going to be. I'm super curious to see what happens. We're seeing some folks improve here and there on Zoom and here and there on asset sharing and collaboration software and things like that. But as far as managing the work remotely, again, I think that there needs to be a bit of look. I think to some extent there might be a real benefit here to in some cases to psychological safety. I think companies can go one of two ways in this case, and I've seen them go both ways. There are going to be companies who are going to double down on monitoring their employees. Are you online, right? Are you at your desk? How much are you typing on your keyboard, right? I get these. I have a client who gives us usernames and email addresses on their system, and they're a Microsoft shop, and so the Microsoft Outlook or the whole Office, I get a monthly, maybe it's a weekly email that tells me how collaborative I've been, right? It tells me how much time I've spent in meetings with others and how much time I've spent on my own and where I could be doing more collaboration and more productivity. And I think that organizations that double down on sort of increased monitoring of their employees' activities are going to be heavily disappointed in the quality of the work that those employees produce. I've seen companies go the other way and say, look, okay, we can't be in person. We're all adults. We're all dealing with a difficult situation. Many of us have children at home or some situations that are going to keep us from being fully productive 100% of the working day. And so we trust you to do the work, to raise your hand when you have issues, and to figure out the best rhythms with your companies. And I think it's those organizations that are ultimately going to thrive, because what they're doing is they're creating the psychological safety for people to innovate. And if I can innovate with my personal ways of working, with my team's ways of working, I feel more free to innovate with the products and the services that I'm working on as well. And so I hesitate to say use this tool or that tool or whatever it is, because the tools will come and go, and I like I said, I suspect they'll get much better in the years to come. But what I would look for is the ability to organize your teams in a way, your team's activities in a way that works for that team. I work right now. One of my teams that I work on one team that's a group of consultants from 4 different countries. Okay, our time zones overlap pretty well, but four different countries are represented in that group. So we have an asynchronous chat that keeps us in communication over the course of the working day. We have a daily check-in or daily stand-up. We have document repositories. We use Miro and Mural and Zoom, and that works for us. And we've tried to be more formal about it. We've tried different tools, right? We tried building a Trello board for the team. I'm a big fan. It was my idea. It didn't work. It was too much process for a 4-person team who's already checking in once a day for a half hour to an hour. And so I think that the management of the work, the success of the management of the work is going to be based on how much you let your teams self-organize around this and make it clear to them that it's safe to ask for help, right? So if they're trying to self-organize and they're saying, look, we can't figure this out. We keep the communication between dev and design isn't working or whatever it is. Then somebody can come in and say, okay, great, let's try this and see how it works, right? And if it doesn't work, then we change it as well. But that, to me, that's what I've seen as successful. But kind of managing the work is a big question. So if you've got a more specific aspect of it, I'd love to hear it.
One thing that I noticed, Jeff, is that there is this cultural stuff going on, and now that you are living in Europe, you see that Latinos deal with stuff in a different way. They're more emotional. I would say less organized. between you and me, uh, less straight to the point. And one of the things that I feel is that, for example, we are talking about here with Spanish speaking people and Portuguese speaking people. And one of the things that I noticed is that we try to put everything in tools, but it doesn't work because in the end, well, the cultural thing is bigger than every tool we use. We need to talk. We need to sort of, quote unquote, be face to face, and that's it. I don't know. I would like your opinion about that.
Yeah, it's a fair question, and it's one that look, I live in Spain now, and I've been here for 3 years. I have several clients here in Spain, and I've worked all over the world. I've worked in a variety of different cultures, and the challenge in many countries, in many organizations, is the national culture, right? It's there are certain ways of doing things. There are certain relationships between people that no amount of agile or lean or user-centered design is going to change, right? For example, I do a lot of work in Japan. Or I mean, annually I do some work, and it's not a lot, it's not fair. I do some work in Japan every year, right? Especially in Asia, sort of in general, there is a very high regard for your superiors, right? The boss, right? And this idea of challenging the boss, that the boss might be wrong and that you would somehow say that to the boss in a public setting, it's just not going to happen, right? It's never going to happen, right? That kind of relationship. And so even if you go out and you do some design work and the design work comes back and says, hey, yeah, it wasn't a great design, right? You're not going to tell the boss they were wrong. Certainly not in front of other people, right? Maybe in private you can say, here's what we've learned. What would you like to do? And so the national culture is really you have to respect it, and you have to understand that it's going to cause some friction. Like, look, I haven't worked in Brazil, so to be fair. But in Spain, it's when we get together around here, and we have a mixed community of expats and Spaniards, Catalans as well, and it's kind of like, hey, we're getting together at 8:30. Okay, 8:30 American time, 8:30 Spanish time, right? Like what is 8:30 really, right? Because 8:30 American time is 8:28, right? And 8:30 Spanish time is like 9:15, right? Something 9:30 still within Spanish time, right? So I think you have to recognize it, and I think you have to recognize where there are things that are not going to happen. I have a big client in India right now, and that's been really fascinating as well, because we're trying to bring lean, agile, customer centricity, continuous learning to an organization that is very top down. And in that top down in that culture, right? If the boss says something, you say yes, sir, right? And continuous learning, agility, user centricity means that just because the boss said it doesn't mean it's right. And those are very, very difficult conversations to have. So it's tough.
Talking more about the forever employable thing. I work for an American organization that now it's worldwide. It's called Close It. We're trying to fix the gap of work and education for working learners, people that being laid off before COVID, and now, of course, we have a legion of people, millions out in the market. And one of the things that I notice is that when you're changing careers, when you're trying to get new competencies, you feel like you are fake. You're not entitled to do that somehow. That you are not prepared, and at the same time, it's all you have in front of you. What do you have to say to those people that are feeling that they are fake UX designers, that they are not ready to be ones?
Yeah. So this is imposter syndrome, and imposter syndrome is extremely common. I think anybody who says they've never had it is lying. Some people get over it, and some people don't. I'll tell you this. Look, I still have it, and it bothers me. It bothers me. So this book is a significant departure from, in many ways, in some ways, no, but in many ways, is a significant departure from everything else that I've done. Lean UX, Sense and Respond, Lean versus Agile versus Design Thinking, and everything else. A month ago, on June 16th, when I pushed publish, because I self-published the book, I was terrified. I really was. I was like, I almost didn't do it. I'd been working for 2 years, got this thing done. There's a lot of personal stuff in here, right? It's not just a different approach, a different domain, but there's personal stories in there, which there aren't in Lean UX. It's not necessary, right? And in Sense and Respond. And so I almost didn't push publish on the book because of that imposter syndrome. And I think that the best way to overcome that, I don't know that it ever goes away, but I think the best way to overcome it is to get smaller versions of the idea out in public as soon as possible. To me, that's been the most effective. It's experiments, right? So for months before Forever Employable came out, I was tweeting about it. I was posting stuff on LinkedIn. I would write a thing here and a thing there, and really gauging where it's resonating, where it's not, where there might be some pushback, and really trying to build some confidence in myself and the material that says when I publish this book, people will actually pay attention to it. And so that stuff never goes away. The thing you build on are the small wins, right? So that tweet that a lot of people liked, or that little bit of work that you did that really made a difference for this one company, or something, even if you're going through sort of a UX boot camp or a transformation program, the portfolio that you built or the feedback that you got from a potential client, all of that stuff helps. And so to me, the thing that beats the imposter syndrome is, it's counterintuitive, is continuously putting yourself out there. Not in a massive way, although books, there's kind of, you can only de-risk them up to a certain point, right? You can tweet and LinkedIn, but at some point you got to publish the book, right? But I think that a continuous flow of sharing of small things. Here's a wireframe that I did. Here's a design I thought of. Here's I thought of a way of improving this Instagram thing. Every little thing, right? Just keep putting little things out there, because people will support you. People will give you feedback, and they will give you critique. And if it's done well and respectfully, you will grow from that critique and you will increase your confidence. And so the next time you put something out there, you get a little bit more confidence. And I think that ultimately really helps play that down. Like I said, I don't think it ever goes away. I still feel it, I'd say on a weekly basis. And I just kind of put stuff out there, and then every now and again something hits, something resonates, and it really makes you feel like, okay, I'm not an imposter.
One thing that I learned from my experience as an athlete, not a professional one, but athlete, is that the ones that are good athletes are the ones that endure the pain. And I think we have psychological pain when we feel that we are imposters. But this is the truth. Every day it hurts because it's important for you. If it wasn't important, you couldn't care less that you were doing something. Um, Talking about the whole stuff of being forever employable, because this is one thing that I really love about the subject, which is, how do you propose on the book that people build this career and this whole, especially when you're transitioning careers?
So yeah, so the book is it's a recipe for building a platform around yourself, a platform of experience, of recognized expertise, of thought leadership, of a personal brand in many ways. And there are explicit steps in the book about how to uh, pick a topic, enhance that topic, improve, experiment, and learning, and continuously grow your audience. The um, the the goal here is to make sure that you are clear about what problems you help people solve. So, what is the value that you bring to a company or to a client or to your customers? And then um, how do you then deliver that value or that expertise in a variety of different ways, right? So it's not just doing the work necessarily, but it's sharing the work. It's about talking about the work. It's about writing, making videos, doing webinars and webcasts and podcasts around the work, so that your name becomes synonymous with that work, right? For better or for worse, I'm the lean UX guy, right? I'm the lean UX guy because I've been talking about lean UX for 12 years. Um, and so when people need help with customer centricity, with building collaborative product development teams, introducing and including design in an agile environment, I'm the first person they come to. And that's because I have been consistently speaking and talking, and most importantly, sharing my experience with lean UX. Now, not just in the book, right? If you go to my blog, there's dozens and dozens of blog posts in there that are my experience. Everything is based on either in-house work or client work. It's work that I've done. I do my best not to talk about things I haven't done, right? Or not to promote things that I haven't done. And if right, and if I am going to do that, which is very, very rare, I will be clear that I have not tried this, but I've heard it works, right? So your mileage may vary, as they say. But to me, that's the trick, right? So you're building this platform, and you're sharing. You're sharing consistently, and you're persevering through the lack of engagement. Because initially, you're going to publish stuff, and not very many people are going to pay attention. But if you continue to do it, if you stay on topic, if you stay on message, if you engage people in the conversation appropriately and respectfully, then at some point, people do start to pay attention. And that's when it starts to pick up momentum, and that's when those new opportunities start to come in. And again, this doesn't have to be about being a freelancer or self-employed. This could work very, very well for you if you want to work and continue working inside a company. Because if you've got a personal brand, people know you as that person, then another organization may say, wow, they have that person. Isn't that the lean UX guy? Shouldn't we employ the lean UX guy? Right? And they do that. Or your own organization says, wow, we've got a real resource here that's not only doing good work and training our own people, but that person is attracting high quality candidates to the company as well. So that's the plan here, right? The plan is to decide what you're going to work on, to plant the flag, or what you're going to share, to plant that flag, and then to build a platform around it.
Well, this is what I talk about, building a reputation, and people listen to me, but not as frequently as they should. It's nice to hear from you, coming from you, because I think that people have to understand. And there is another thing. People have to understand that building a career is like building a church for yourself, meaning it takes a long time. It's a deep thought every day about what you did right, what you did wrong, what you should improve, what you should say more frequently, and do better. And And one of the things that I feel is that people today want to be overnight an UX expert or a UX recognized person, um, and it's not gonna happen. Especially if you're transitioning careers, because in the beginning you are feeling an imposter first, and people feel that when they are interviewing you. Second, you are not fast, and you are not the sharpest one in tools and methods and etc. So it doesn't happen. What do you think about that?
So look, so I love the word that you're using, which is reputation. A lot of folks will say to me, I don't want to write. I don't want to put myself out there. I'm not comfortable. I don't want to stand on stage um, and give talks. I get that. I totally get it. It's work. It's, certainly at the beginning, it's unpaid work. Hopefully it becomes paid work at some point. But it's about, so the question is exactly what you're saying, Amyris, which is how do I build my reputation, right? I want to be known for what I do. And so there's got to be some kind of sharing back. If you rely solely on the kindness of others to recommend you and your work, I think you're taking a pretty big risk. I think that can happen, and I've seen it happen. I know when I lived in New York, despite it being a big city, the tech community seemed very incestuous. Everybody kind of knew everybody. And so there was certainly some of that. It's like, hey, I need a good UX designer. Who's good? Who should I try to go after? They're like, oh, there's her at JP Morgan. There's that other woman who works over at that startup, right? And so there is some of that. But if you're going to rely solely on that, I think you're going to find it difficult ultimately to be forever employable. So I think you've got to take some initiative. And a lot of folks aren't comfortable with this because it might come across as arrogant or conceited even, right? Look at me, I'm so good at what I do. Yeah, look at you, you're so good at what you do, right? Tell people, right? You don't have to come across like our collective presidents. Let's just put it that way, right? I'm not talking about that level of ego. But yeah, we both have our issues there, right? In the U.S. and in Brazil. But I'm talking about but a practical, helpful, humble sharing of your expertise. Who wouldn't want that, right? So, for example, if you look back at all the early stuff and it's not like I'm not doing it anymore, but if you look back at all the early stuff that we were sharing when we were figuring out lean UX, right? It was super humble stuff. It was, hey, we're a team and we're a UX team and we're trying to figure out how to do UX and Agile together. And we tried taking our 9-month product cycle and condensing it into 2 weeks for the last 3 sprints. And it was a disaster. And here's why it was a disaster. And here's what we learned. And for the next 3 weeks, this is what we're going to try. Right? And it's that humility that builds the connection with your audience because you're authentic. Right? And so you have to be your own cheerleader. You have to be you should share back, and I think you have to be humble about what's working and what's not. But certainly when something works, hey, it worked, right? Hey, we did this thing and it really worked. And I suggest you try it. And if it works for you, I'd love to hear about it. Right. And so to me, that's the key here is building that reputation and getting over that I don't know what the word is, that sense that you shouldn't be your own cheerleader. You should be your own best cheerleader 100% of the time.
Yeah, and I think it comes with Leticia here is asking, since the subject is employability, how to deal with ageism in the UX market. And before you answer, Jeff, I would say something to Leticia. I am 60 years old and I'm still employable. And I can employ myself, and I do a lot of things, but people are asking for my advice, for my knowledge in many companies, and it's because of my reputation of delivering, of being on schedule, on providing the best in class work that there is in UX. So, how about, what do you think about that, Jeff?
Yeah, ageism is real, no doubt about it, and it's an issue. I think. What have I seen? I'm trying to think of what I've seen. Look, the sad part of what I've seen is that at a certain age, and I don't know what that age is, but I do believe that it's that number is getting bigger, which is, it's headed in the right direction at least. But I do believe that at a certain age, I see the majority of UX designers go into private practice, consulting, basically. And I think it's largely because finding a full-time in-house job when you're 55, 60, I think it becomes increasingly more difficult. There are opportunities, I think, for design leadership roles that people with that much experience are suited for, but how many of those jobs are there? Right? There aren't that many, right? So I'll give you an example. Is Greg Petroff. Greg Petroff was the chief experience officer at General Electric under Beth Comstock for a long time. He then went to Google for a while, and he's now at ServiceNow in California. Greg's got to be close to 60 at this point. And he's done a tremendous job of translating a UX career into a design leadership career. But again, the sad part is that, well, the unfortunate part is that there just aren't that many chief design officer or chief experience roles out there. So if you're going to target that career path, right, it's important to kind of set yourself on that path now. If you're kind of 45, 50, 55, et cetera, kind of heading into in that direction. What to do about it? I'm sort of sharing what I've seen. I don't know, because I don't think I've got a good answer for what to do about it. But what I've seen is, a lot of folks go into private practice because they've got so much experience at that point. They can better deliver it across a variety of industries, and they've got a big enough network because of the amount of years that they've been working, that they can say, hey, look, I'm in private practice now. Let me help you. Let me support you. And that becomes a little bit easier. I think beyond that, I'll tell you what my biggest concern was, and it's funny, Amyris, because you said you're 60, I'm 47. This book starts on the story in the book starts on the day that I turned 35. On the day that, and if you read this, it's like the first story in the book, on the day that I turned 35, I was terrified. I was terrified that in 5 years from that date, when I turned 40, that I would be old and unemployable and too expensive, which is what drove the transformation, right? And so I think that there is I think there's a realization that you have to make, and I think that ultimately, if there's one of the things that I was concerned about already at 35, because I was a manager of designers, was that my actual design skills were going away, and that the younger designers that were coming in were better than me, not just because they were better designers, but because they had better skills, they were faster, they knew all the latest tools, and I didn't know them anymore. And so I think that if you're trying to stay relevant, and if you're trying to stay employed in-house, and you don't want to go into a design leadership role, I think the best advice I have is just to stay current on the tools, on the processes, on the ways of working, and it's tough. It's an ongoing, it's an ongoing process. I remember at that time when I was at the Ladders in 2008, 2009, 2010, I had a gentleman come work for me who was older than me by at least 10 years, and ironically, he was my mentor when I was starting out. And so when I had my first job, he was the senior guy in my department, and I learned a lot from him. And then I went into design leadership. And so when he needed a job, I said, hey, I got a spot on my team. Come on over. And the challenge with him, I remember this clearly. And to be clear, like, he was my friend. He was at my wedding. Let's just put it that way, okay? He was invited to my wedding, and now he's working for me. He was not willing to change with the times. He was not willing to learn new tools. He was not willing to change his ways of working to this new agile way of working. It just conflicted with everything that he knew how to do. And I had to, we had to part ways. Let's just put it that way. And that was really painful. And so I think in a variety of ways. And so the last bit of advice is, if you want to stay relevant, if you want to stay employed in-house, you've got to stay current and up to date with everything. That's the best advice I have. I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's what I have.
I think that being flexible for new tools and for new ways of work, and one of the things that makes me still relevant is that I'm learning all the time. Now I'm learning about, because I love neuroscience, I'm learning about robots and AI, and that's it. I'm learning for new things all the time. I think this is important to stay relevant. And we still have 10 minutes to go. And I think that it would be nice to hear from you, from your experience with the new companies, with the whole time on remote things, your advice for people to stay relevant when you can't bond emotionally with someone, to invite this person to your wedding.
Yeah, that's fair. It's been tough. One of the things that I've done, and I'm going to tell you that it's one of the smartest things that I've ever done, and it was completely not planned. In other words, it was just kind of one of those shower moments, when like, oh my God, I know what I have to do. Run out and do it. I did this 5 years ago. Is I started a community of consultants like me who do what I do for a living. It's a small group. It's a private group. It's folks, with a certain type of work, certain type of business, certain level of success. And that group has been a lifesaver over the years, and especially now, because that is my office. That is my support group. That is where I go when I need to vent about work or clients, or if I need something for a contract or whatever it is. And so creating that community around myself, the community that I wanted to have, has been one of the best things I've done to stay connected, to continue to get smarter and learn new ideas, and to build friendships and camaraderie and business relationships and that type of thing. We do, just to give you a sense, we've got a Slack channel. It's not terribly active. There are days that are more active than others, but the signal to noise ratio is very high. There's very little noise in there. We keep the group small, and we do a weekly stand-up. It's optional, so whoever shows up, and we talk about what we're doing or challenges that we're having. It's a great way to connect with folks. In fact, in this year, just before the pandemic really got serious, we all got together in the real world for the first time, or most of the people in the group. We'd never done that before. We went skiing together in the United States for the first time. A few of us had never met in real life, and it's been that type of community that's been a real lifesaver for me professionally. I feel like I have people to talk to. I have people to complain about. I have people to say, listen, I've sat in this chair now for what feels like 57,000 hours since March 13th, right? And I've broken the chair. What kind of chairs do you guys sit in? And help me find a new one. It's anything and everything, right? And it's been really helpful. And so for me, my bit of advice here is build the community that you want, right? So if you're not getting into the communities that you think you should be in, or you're not finding them, build it yourself, right? Start a LinkedIn group, a Slack channel, a Discord server, whatever tool. It doesn't matter ultimately, right? And then invite folks that you think will help make that a good crew. One thing I've learned on the fly is community management. If you have any experience with that, it goes a long way. If not, you'll learn. But that's the best thing I've done in the last 5 years to stay sane during this remote reality.
I was telling you about my own group. I have my support group, which are people that were my students, because I teach UX since 1998. I also practice, but I also teach, and they became my employees. We work together for more than 20 years, and they are really my support group, and we share everything. But I still looking for a broader and more international group to be with. I think it's important. We both met at IXDA, right? One of the conference.
Mm-hmm. And look, and that's a great place to start, right? So if there's a professional organization that you're a part of, and there are folks in that organization, especially if it's an international group, kind of start to pick and choose. But there's something nice about that too. You could say, listen, hey, I'm starting a group, and I'd love for you to be a part of it, right? There's something nice about being picked for a group. It's flattering, right? I value your expertise and your insight, and I'd like you to be part of my community. I think that is, I think that's flattering, and I think you'll find that folks will join, especially now, and kind of see what happens from there.
Raquel Lemos is asking us about people that go to a leadership role because they are good on their technical skills, and they are not prepared to be leaders. What do you think about that?
I think it's a massive problem. I can tell you that when I became when I became a UX manager or a director of UX, no one had taught me how to manage people. I'd never learned how to manage people. I can't tell you I was good at it. In fact, I can tell you I was bad at it, and I made a lot of mistakes. And so I think that it is the organization's responsibility. If you're going to promote someone into people management, you have to invest in people management training. And if they're not, then as the person being promoted, I think it's up to you to ask for that. I think that's really, really important, is to ask for that promotional training as well. I think because if you don't have it, you're going to struggle, right? My first ever design management job, I was leading a team of 4 people, and I had to fire someone from the team. My first management job ever. No one taught me how to fire somebody, right? It was awful. I lost sleep. I still feel guilty about it. It's been 15 years, and I still feel terrible about it that I had to do it. And so I think if you're not getting that kind of training, you have to ask for it. And if they don't give it to you, then you need to take it upon yourself to do so as well.
Yeah. Just finish here. That one of the things we have to learn is who we are, what we want, and from life, from work life, for everything. And most people just are trying to pay the bills or get a new job or get a new opportunity without thinking who they are and what they want from life. I think this is a massive problem, and I want your final words and everything here.
Sorry. Yeah. So look, I think that it's interesting. If over the last 20 years of working, I've updated my LinkedIn profile maybe 10 times, right? The actual thing at the top that says what you do. And every time it's been a really difficult thing to do, because I take it seriously, and I want to be clear about what my purpose is really, and what I help people do. And I think that when you've got a sense of what gets you out of bed in the morning, you bring that and you do that kind of work. It's evident in the work. It's evident in your interactions. It's evident in what you share back. And so my final bit of advice on this is go to my LinkedIn profile and do three things. First of all, you can connect with me if you want. I'd love to. Don't hesitate. Second thing, look at what I wrote as my bio line. It's like 50 words long, if that, maybe 40 words long, because I worked hard on that. And then think about how you could distill what you offer to people that way. And the third thing I'll ask you to do is, one of the most recent posts I have on LinkedIn is about this Japanese concept of ikigai, which is essentially your reason for being, or the reason that you get out of bed every morning. And walk yourself through the quadrants in that exercise, right? What am I good at? What do I love to do? What does the world need? And what can I get paid for, right? And you're kind of looking for the intersection of those things. And when you find that intersection, right, that's your ikigai, right? That's your reason for being. And so I think that's a really great exercise to do for yourself, and really kind of gives you focus. If you do start to build a platform around yourself, that's the founding principle there, right? Is that the center of that ikigai diagram. So highly recommend you run through that exercise, and I hope it works for you.
Well, it worked for me. I did, and it's really interesting when you find your ikigai. Jeff, I couldn't thank you more about this conversation. It was a pleasure, and I think that folks will take a lot from this video. That will be soon released on YouTube. And thank you for accepting for this challenge.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and it's a pleasure. And if you've got a question and you didn't get it answered, just reach out. I'm super easy to find on my website, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, whatever it is. Just drop me a note. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Well, thank you. Bye. Hello, Gracias.